The moment Aria Vance realized the name in her father's will, the world around her seemed to collapse into silence. The polished marble floor beneath her heels felt unsteady, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and regret, and the echo of a decision she had made just days before came rushing back like a storm she could no longer outrun. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Wisdom Story House. Stories like this remind us that one decision can change everything. The morning she denied him had been bright and ordinary, the kind of day that promised efficiency and progress. Aria stood at the top of a towering glass building, her office overlooking a city that never seemed to pause. She was known for her sharp instincts, her ability to make difficult calls without hesitation, and her unwavering commitment to maintaining her company's reputation. People admired her, feared her, and trusted her leadership. But that morning, something had shifted, though she didn't know it yet. He had walked into the interview room wearing a suit that had seen better days. His name was Rowan Hale. His shoulders carried a quiet exhaustion, but his eyes held a steady determination that didn't go unnoticed. Beside him, holding tightly to his hand, was a little girl with tangled hair and a soft toy clutched to her chest. She looked around nervously, her small fingers gripping the fabric as if it were her anchor in an unfamiliar world. Rowan had explained that he couldn't afford childcare that day, that this interview meant everything, that he had no one else to watch his daughter. His voice was calm, but beneath it was a desperation that only someone who had fought too many battles alone could understand. Aria listened, her expression professional and unreadable, but her mind was already weighing the risks. Her company was known for discipline and structure. Bringing a child into an interview, into a corporate environment, disrupted that image. It suggested unpredictability, a lack of boundaries, and potential complications. Aria believed in order, in control, in making decisions that protected the larger system rather than bending for individual circumstances. So she made the decision. She denied him the job. Rowan didn't argue. He simply nodded, thanked her for her time, and placed a reassuring hand on his daughter's shoulder. As they turned to leave, the little girl looked back once, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and quiet sadness that lingered longer than Aria expected. But Aria turned away, pushing the moment aside, convincing herself that she had done what was necessary. Days passed, filled with meetings, contracts, and the relentless pace of corporate life. Then came the call that changed everything. Her father had passed away. The news struck her like a sudden storm. Though their relationship had grown distant over the years, there had always been an unspoken bond between them. He had built the foundation upon which her success stood, a man known not just for his business acumen but for his compassion. He had often told her that true success was measured not by profits but by the lives one touched along the way. Aria had admired him, but she had also chosen a different path, one shaped by logic and efficiency rather than emotion. The day of the will reading arrived with a heavy stillness. The room was filled with quiet tension, the air thick with anticipation. Aria sat at the head of the table, her posture composed, her expression steady. She expected the usual distribution of assets, perhaps a few surprises, but nothing that would shake the foundation of her carefully structured world. Then the lawyer began to read. Her father's words were precise, deliberate, and filled with a warmth that seemed to echo his presence. He spoke of legacy, of responsibility, of the importance of seeing beyond the surface of things. Aria listened, her heart tightening with each passing sentence. And then the name came. Rowan Hale. The room fell silent. Aria's breath caught as the lawyer continued, explaining that Rowan had been entrusted with a significant portion of her father's estate, along with a personal note. Confusion and disbelief swirled within her. How could this be? How could a man she had dismissed so easily hold such importance in her father's life? Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the note. It was written in her father's familiar handwriting, each word carrying a weight that pressed against her chest. He spoke of Rowan not as a stranger, but as someone he had quietly supported over the years. A man who had once helped him during a moment of vulnerability, long before Aria had taken over the company. A man who had refused payment, who had simply offered kindness without expectation. Her father had never forgotten that. He wrote about how he had kept an eye on Rowan's life, aware of the struggles he faced as a single father, aware of the resilience he showed every day. He had wanted to help more, but he believed in allowing people to stand on their own when they could. And then came the line that shattered Aria's composure. He had trusted her to recognize that same resilience, to offer Rowan an opportunity when the time came. But she hadn't. The realization hit her with a force she couldn't ignore. She had failed not just Rowan, but her father's belief in her. She had chosen policy over compassion, structure over understanding, and in doing so, she had turned away someone who had once shown her father kindness when it mattered most. The memory of Rowan standing in that interview room, his daughter by his side, came flooding back with painful clarity. The exhaustion in his eyes, the quiet dignity in his voice, the way he had accepted her decision without resentment. And the little girl, holding on to hope in a place that offered none. Aria felt something within her begin to shift, a crack in the armor she had built over years of discipline and control. For the first time in a long while, she questioned herself. She didn't wait. That same afternoon, she left her office, her usual composed demeanor replaced by a sense of urgency that drove her forward. The city around her moved as it always did, but for Aria, everything felt different. The noise, the movement, the endless rush of people, all of it seemed distant compared to the weight of what she needed to do. Finding Rowan wasn't easy, but determination has a way of clearing obstacles. When she finally stood outside his modest apartment building, her heart pounded with a mixture of anxiety and resolve. The door opened slowly. Rowan stood there, surprise flickering across his face. His daughter peeked out from behind him, her small hand gripping his shirt as she recognized the woman from the interview. Aria didn't speak immediately. The words she had rehearsed felt inadequate in the face of the moment. She saw the life they lived, the simplicity, the quiet struggle, the strength it took to keep going despite it all. And for the first time, she truly saw him. Not as a risk. Not as a disruption. But as a person. As someone who deserved a chance. The conversation that followed wasn't about policies or expectations. It was about honesty, about acknowledging mistakes, about offering something more than just a job. It was about rebuilding trust in a moment where it had been broken. Rowan listened, his expression guarded but not closed. He had learned to protect himself from disappointment, to rely only on what he could control. But there was something in Aria's sincerity, something in the way she spoke without pretense, that began to break through that barrier. Days later, Rowan walked into the same building that had once turned him away. But this time, he wasn't alone in his uncertainty. He carried with him a renewed sense of possibility. And Aria stood beside him, not as a distant CEO, but as someone who had learned the value of looking beyond the surface. The journey wasn't easy. There were challenges, adjustments, moments of doubt. But with each passing day, something remarkable began to take shape. Rowan proved himself not just as an employee, but as an invaluable part of the company. His perspective, shaped by years of resilience, brought a depth that numbers and strategies alone could never achieve. And Aria changed. She began to see her company not just as a machine of efficiency, but as a community of individuals, each with their own stories, their own struggles, their own strengths. She implemented changes, small at first, then larger ones, creating a culture that valued both excellence and empathy. The impact was undeniable. The company grew, not just in success, but in spirit. And somewhere in the midst of it all, Aria found a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. A connection to something greater than herself. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like, share, and comment. Your support helps keep stories like this alive and reminds others that compassion still matters. But before we reach the end, here's a special request. Comment the word second chance if you believe that one act of kindness can change someone's entire life. Because sometimes, the greatest lessons come not from our successes, but from the moments we realize we were wrong, and choose to make it right. And in that choice, we don't just change someone else's story. We change our own.